How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today was in Daf 80 of Masechta Chullin, friends. Okay, today should be a shorter daf than yesterday. The first section of today's daf, we will be defining a koi. Yesterday, of course, we were understanding a koi to be a type of mix between a behema and a chaya. We're going to see a few other opinions on that topic in the first section of today's daf, and then we begin having a look at the shita of Reb Shimon when it comes to also ves bino, an interesting discussion related around to shchita she'ena re'uya. If it's considered shchita or not, it's going to be an interesting discussion that is going to continue into tomorrow's daf on Pei Aleph. So I think today should be a beautiful daf. Come join me. Let's have a great time learning Daf 80 of Masechta Chullin. Friends, we begin on Daf Pei Amid Aleph of Masechta Chullin, about 20 or even a little bit more than that lines from the top. I'd say maybe even it's a little bit easier to find it from where it gets wide. It's probably about 15 or so lines before the lines get wide. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda Koi. When it comes to this esoteric animal called a koi, birya b'fnei atzmi, says Rav Yehuda, it is its own thing. That's nice. V'echriyu ba chachamim im min behema im min chaya, and the chachamim were uncertain whether it is a behema, whether it is a chaya, and it's its own thing. Rashi and Tosfos both point out that Rav Yehuda is not weighing in on directly on the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chacham that we saw yesterday, because according to them, a koi is this mix between a behema and a chaya, and they debated that quite thoroughly, kind of how to treat this behema chaya mix. So rather, there's a Mishnah that we are going to be learning quite soon at the beginning of the next parak Kisui Adam, and it is defining the koi in that context that Rav Yehuda is commenting on, says Tosfos. Nachman Omer says Rav Nachman, koi ze el habar, says Rav Nachman, it is the wild ram that is a koi. Kitanor, like we learn in a brisa, koi ze el habar, says the Tanakam in the brisa said that a koi is a wild ram. Some say ze haba min hatayish umin hatzviya. Some say it's like we learned about yesterday, the result of a goat and a deer. Reb Yossi Omer says, Reb Yossi, koi birya b'fnei atzma hiv l'achriyu ba chachamim im min chaya im min behema. Reb Yossi says, like Rav Yehuda had said, like Rav Yossi says, that a koi, no, or who was that? Yeah, was that? Yeah, that was Rav Yehuda. That a koi is a birya b'fnei atzma. A koi is its own thing. V'lachriyu ba chachamim, and the chacham could not get a consensus in min chaya in behema if it is a chaya or a behema. And finally, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer says, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, min behema, a koi is in fact a type of behema. V'shal beis doshoi hayu megadlin men adorim, and by the house and the family of doshoi, they would have herds and herds of kois. Okay. Give all in chapa shluck of coffee, we'll go weiter. Okay. Says the Gemara, Omer Reb Zera, Omer Reb Safra, Omer Reb Amnuna. Says Reb Zera, in the name of Safra, the name of Amnuna. Hani ize de balo, these forest goats, ksheres lagav mizbeach, are allowed to be offered in the mizbeach, which means that they are behemas. Chayas are not offered on the altar. Sovela ki hadamer Reb Yitzchak, he holds like that, which Reb Yitzchak says, Eser behemis mana kosuk. The pasuk lists 10 animals. I see here a pasuk, it's quoting a pasuk from Sefer Dvarim. I'll read it, at least part of it. Shor, seksavim, seizim, that's already 3. Ayol, utzvi, that's 5. V'yachmer, v'ako, v'dishon, 8. Uso, v'zomer, 10. So there's 10 animals listed in the psukim there in Parshas Re'eh, which is coming up, We just read yesterday, Sefer Parshas Devarim. It's coming in 3 weeks. Very exciting. So, Ani the Bala, these forest goats, Mizbeach, Sovelaki, Oda, Amr, Rebitzok, Esubay, Mismona, Akosum, Visulo. The Pasuk mentions 10 animals, and that's it. Behane, Midzilka Choshavlu, Badechayas, and the Ize de Bala, since they are not listed among the Chayas, so Shmamina de Eiznenu, it must mean that it is, when we say Se'izim, it includes the Ize de Bala. Maskeflo Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Rav Acha bar Yaakov asks, Ve'ema ayol utzvi prat, kol behema klal. So if Acha bar Yaakov asks, wait a second, can it not be argued? Can't we argue that this is a scenario of a prat uchlal? Prat uchlal naise klal musaf al prat, says the Gemara. Right? Of course, the way that a prat uchlal, so a klalu prat, of course, you have a general rule followed by a specific rule, so it limits it only to the specific rule. We've seen that many times. I think probably less common is what we see here is a prat uchlal. So we say ayol utzvi. Those are two specific kinds of chayas. And ayol, I see different definitions of ayol utzvi. I don't know. But it's a deer and a deer and a hart, a deer and a gazelle. Some kind of a chaya. Akoponim. So it mentions ayol and it mentions tzvi. Meaning ayal. Ayal is different than an ayal. An ayal is a ram, which is a sheep. But an ayal is either a deer or a gazelle or a hart. Akoponim. So it mentions ayol, it mentions tzvi, and then the very next pasuk says b'chol behema, all behemoths. So we have two specifics, ayol, tzvi, b'chol behema, all behemoths. So let's say this is a prat uchlal. The way that it works by prat uchlal, specifics and then general, is that the general is expanding the list of specifics to be broader. So when it says ayol utzvi and then it says b'chol behema, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov wants to argue that it means that there are lots of chayas, more than just ayol and tzvi. There's other things, potentially including the Ize de Bala. So again, Maskiv Rav Acha bar Yankiv, Be'ema, I will argue, says Rav Acha bar Yaakov, ayol tzvi prat, ayol tzvi specific, v'chol kol behema, and then it says all animals, klal ufra, klal, prat uchlal. When you have a prat followed by a klal, nice a klal musif al a prat ika tuva. So that would be to imply that there are many chayas, including the Ize de Bala. Imkein kol ani prate lamali. But then why do I need to list 7 chayas? Right? There were 3 behemoths, 7 chayas. If we're just saying klal musaf al a prat, so just tell me one prat, tell me like a tzvi or something, v'chol behemoth, and all animals, and I'll say, okay, and I'll expand it to way more than a tzvi. From the fact that it mentions 7 chayas and then a klal makes us think maybe it's specifically those 7. Maskiflo Rav Acha bre Tervika v'Dilma mina de akoninu. Included in that list of chayas were ako, dishon, so, zemer. What in the world are those? Do you know what they are? Anybody know what those are? No. Nobody knows what they are. Maybe it's a Ize de Bala. Maybe an Ize de Bala is a type of ako. And maybe it's a chaya. Dilma mina de so or mina de zemer. Maybe it's a type of so. Maybe it's a type of zemer. These are different types of chayas. So maybe an Ize de Bala is a chaya. Omerle Rav Chanan Rav Ashi Amemer Shari Tarbayu. Amemer would taka allow the chaylev of an Ize de Bala of forest goats to be in, which means that they're taka achaya. But amine Abed Rav Minyamin Barchia me Rav Huna Barchia Hana Ize de Bala Ma'aligab Mizbeach. Can you offer these Ize de Bala, these forest goats, on the altar? Amalei. So Rav Huna Barchia responds, Adkan luplige Rabbi Yosef Rabban el b'shar abad. There's a machlekes in the Mishnah Masechta Kilayim regarding a wild ox. Tetanan shar habar min behemahu Rabbi Yossi Omer min chaya. That by a shar habar the Tanna Kama says it's a behema, Rabbi Yossi says it's a chaya. So it's a machlokes. Ta'abanan savei midim targeminon turbala mina de behema who. That the rabbis hold that it is a behema because when the pasuk defines the se'o in the Torah, it's defined as tor, which is an ox, bala, I guess a forest ox, and I guess a forest ox would be a type of behema. Rabbi Yossi savar midikol choshev lei ba'adei chayis mina de chayahu. Whereas Rabbi Yossi's opinion is that a se'o is listed among the 7 chayas. Since it's listed among the 7 chayas, a se'o, which we're saying is a wild ox or a forest ox, must be a chaya. Aval hane divrei hakol mina de'ez ninu. But when it comes to the izei de bala, however, they would be a type of goat. They would be a behema. Maybe it's a type of ako. Maybe it's a type of so or a type of zemer. Nachman says to Ravashi that a memar would allow the chelev of the izei de bala to be eaten, which means that they are chayas. So, Cheveh, what do you think? What's your feeling? We just learned a bunch of lines about the izei de bala. Some say it's a behema and they argue this way. Some say it's a chaya, they argue that way. Friends, what do you say? Friends, now we move on to the next section of the daf where we will be exploring the shita of Reb Shimon and how that does and doesn't fit into the sugya of Oso ve'Esbeno. Very interesting discussion, in my opinion, which is going to continue into tomorrow's daf. So here we go. The Mishnah had said, Ketzad Asherchet v'chulei. If you remember, in the Mishnah from the beginning of the parak of Oso ve'Esbeno, we had all sorts of scenarios, right? Oso ve'Esbeno, so you have a mother and a daughter, let's say. A mother and a daughter. And I'm going to be assuming for our examples that first you shech the mother, then you shech the daughter, just so that we can have a agreed upon point of reference. Now, we talked about what if they are both korbanis, what if they are both chulin, what if they're both slaughtered outside the azar, inside the azar, one inside, one outside, one outside, one inside, all sorts of scenarios. Now, of Rabbi Ishaye, says the holy Rabbi Ishaye, kula masnisin delai Reb Shimon. So says Rabbi Ishaye, our Mishnah is not the shita of Reb Shimon. The shitas of Reb Shimon is incompatible with our Mishnah. He argues on it. Mimai, how come? I'll tell you how come. Midikatoni kodshim bachutz, harishin chayv kores v'shneim psulin v'shneim sofkin isar aboyim, mirtei sham inelele Reb Shimon da mashchita shenim uya losh mashchita, kama miktol katle sheni miskabel b'fnim, hu kores nami lichayev, gewaldig. Very, very gishmak. So, for starters, says Rabbi Shaya, midikatoni kodshim bachutz, if both mother and daughter are korbanis, they're both korban shlamims, and they're both slaughtered outside of the azar. So what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said, well, for the first shchita, it's shchutei chutz, and you're going to be chayiv karis for shchutei chutz, and chayiv makis for shchutei chutz, and the shchita is psula. Now, when it comes to the daughter, there's no chiyuv karis. Who can remember why there's no chiyuv karis? There's no chiyuv karis because the pasuk had said, if you remember from Masechtas Zvachim, El Pesach Oyel Moyed Loi Hevi Oy, that the issue with shchutei chutz is that you were supposed to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash and offer it as a korban in the Azar, but you didn't. You shechted it outside of the Azar. You're supposed to bring it into the Azara, you shechted it outside of the Azara, that's shchutei chutz. However, we said in our Mishnah, once you shechted the mother, you're not allowed to shech the daughter for the rest of the day. Therefore, when you then shechted the daughter, you weren't actually supposed to bring it to the Pesach or Moed. You had to be waiting until tomorrow. So therefore, by shechting outside the Azara, it's not a violation of shchutei chutz, because shchutei chutz would have to wait till tomorrow for the daughter. So you're not chayiv kares for shchutei chutz, nor you chayiv makis for shchutei chutz. You chayiv makis for also ves beno. You shechted the mother, and now you're shechting the daughter on that same day. So you chayiv makis for also ves beno. However, Shimon's shita is shchita she'ena reuya lo shma shchita. Very, very, very interesting here. Particularly, it's interesting how it ties in to our sugya, which is that any shchita psula, any shchita she'ena reuya, any non-kosher shchita is not, technically speaking, a shchita. It's a killing, but it's not a shchita. Right? I went to a chicken shchita the other week. One of the shchitas was psula. It's not a shchita. We threw it in the garbage. We killed it. It was dead, sure, but it wasn't shechted. Says Reb Shimon, for it to be considered a shchita bichlal, it needs to be a kosher shchita. A non-kosher shchita is not a shchita. Okay, why is that important? It's important because the pasuk says, "Oso vez beno lo sishchatu biyom echad." The issue with oso vez beno is shchita. Lefi the shita of Reb Shimon, shchitas kodshim bachutz, as we said, is possible. So it's a shchita she'ena reuya. It's not a shchita. It's not shayich bichlal to oso vez beno. So if it's not shayich bichlal to oso vez beno, well, that makes a big difference. Because now, after having shechted the mother, and technically we're saying because it was kodshim b'chutz, it wasn't actually a shchita, and therefore, in terms of can you now go and shech the child? Well, I mean, you have to shech it in the azar. There's no issue of oso vez beno over here because the mother wasn't actually a shchita, so there isn't any issue with shechting the daughter now, because you technically didn't shecht the mother, so there's no oso vez beno. So you should be bringing it to the azara now and offering the daughter in the azara, but you didn't. You offered it outside of the azara. You should be chayiv kares for that as well. So the shita of Reb Shimon, when you shecht both the mother and daughter outside of the azara, you should be chayiv kares both times, because there's bichlal no issue of oso vez beno over here. So again, it's really inside me. How come we're saying that the Mishnah is incompatible with the shita of Reb Shimon? Because with the katani kodshim bachutz, because when we say that when you shech the korban, right, the mother and daughter are both korbanis, and you shech them both outside of the azar, harishan chayiv kares. So for the first one, you chayiv kares for shchutei chutz, v'shneim psulim, and both shchitas are psula. V'shneim sof k'nisai boim, and in both cases there's makis. The first time for shchutei chutz, the second time for oso vez beno. Michte, however, let's see, Shavinon later Reb Shimon, we know that Reb Shimon shita is Damer shchita she'enu lo shma shchita. That Reb Shimon says that any shchita psula is not technically speaking shchita, and therefore the shchita of the first animal, which is possible because it's kodshim b'chutz, is not technically a shchita, which means that there isn't actually anything wrong with shechting the daughter in the azara. So kama miktul katle, the first we treat it as though the first animal, the mother was pashat killed. You knocked it on the head with a broom, whatever it is. You didn't shecht it. You killed it. Sheni miskabel b'fnimu. Therefore, there's no issue now. There's no issue of oso vez beno. There's no issue of bringing the daughter now into the azar and offering it as a korban in the azar. But you didn't do that. Karis nami lichayev. So therefore, when by shechting the daughter outside the azar, you should be chayev kares for that as well. But the Mishnah says you only chayiv kares for the first instance. Clearly, the Mishnah is incompatible with Reb Shimon. We're going to chap a shluck of coffee, and we are going to go weiter on this amazing sugya. Says the Gemara, chulin b'fnim. Similarly, when it comes to offering chulin in the azar, what did the Mishnah say? Well, let's talk it out for a second ourselves. So chulin in the azara, so there's no chiyuv kares. So when you offer the first animal, there's no chiyuv kares, there's no chiyuv makis, but it's a pashul shchita. We said in our Mishnah, when you offer the second animal, the second chulin in the azara, the daughter, there's no chiyuv kares, but there is makis for oso vez beno. Why is there makis for oso vez beno? For there to be makis for oso vez beno, that means that you have to shech the mother, and now you're not allowed to shech the daughter. But technically speaking, the fear of Shimon, you didn't shech the mother. So there should be no issue of oso vez beno. There should be no chiyuv makis for the second animal. Chulin b'fnim, second line of the Gemara, that pyramid base, when you have two animals, mother and daughter, are chulin, and you offer them both in the azar, shneim psulin, so both shchitas are psulin. Ve'asheni soifeg es arboim. The Mishnah had said, and the second, when you shech the second animal, you chayiv makis for osov es beno. Mirde shamin alei Reb Shimon da shchita shenuelish mashchita. We know that Reb Shimon shita is that any shchita psula is not considered shchita. So kama mikto katle. So therefore, as far as Reb Shimon is concerned, the first chulin animal in the azara was killed, not shechted, simply killed. And if that's the case, then that has no implication for the daughter. So sheni hamay soifek es arboim. So then why would there be makis for shechting the daughter in the azara? There's no issue of osov es beno. Osov es beno hinges upon there being a shchita, which there wasn't, according to Reb Shimon. So once again, another example of how the Mishnah is incompatible with Shitas Reb Shimon. Next, Kodshim Bifnim. Here things actually get quite interesting, in my opinion. Kodshim Bifnim, when both mother and daughter are korbanis, and they're shechted in the azare. So friends, what did our Mishnah say in this case? Well, the first animals, A-okay. Completely kosher. Completely kosher. The second animal, we said, however, there's no chiyuv karis, but you can be chayav makis for osov as bino, and the shechita is psula because it's mechusar zman. You weren't allowed because you shechted the mother. You now are not allowed to shech the daughter, so the shechita is psula, and you can be chayav makis for osov as bino. Now here the Gemara says something very, very interesting. Maybe let's read it inside. So again, kodshim bifnim, when it comes to both mother and daughter being korbanos, and they're offered in the azareh, harishin kosher ufater, the first animal, the first korban slaughtered in the azareh is 100% kosher. Vasheni, and in terms of the second guy, right, when you shech the daughter in the azareh now, sovek sarboim ufasol, so there's a chiyav makas for osov es beno, and the shechita is psula. Now, listen to this. Very, very interesting. Get ready for something interesting. Prepare yourselves. Michte, Shaminan led Reb Shimon da Amar shchita she'enuya lo shma shchita. Okay, of course we know Reb Shimon shita is any shchita she'enu re'uya lo shmei shchita. So friends, why would the shchita of the mother, which was a korban, shechted in the azara, why would the shchita of the mother be considered a shchita she'enu re'uya? And therefore there's no osov es beno by the daughter. I would think that shechting a korban in the azar would be shchita re'uya, right? Shchitas kodshim nami shchita she'ena re'uya hi. Chavit, do you hear this? The Gemara is saying that lefi Reb Shimon, or technically lefi everybody. You know, the machlokes in Reb Shimon the Chacham is whether shchita she'ena re'uya is considered shchita or not. The Chacham say, yeah, it's considered shchita. Reb Shimon says it's not. But says the Gemara, technically speaking, the shchita of a korban is shchita she'ena re'uya. Did you hear that? The shchita of a korban is shchita she'ena re'uya. Why is that? The chol kama de lo zarik dam lo mishtri basar. Because ultimately, shchita of a korban is incomplete. Sure, you shecht it properly, and that's important, but it alone is insufficient. When it comes to lunch, if you're shechting a sheep for lunch, so when the sheep is alive, you can't eat it. It's Eiver Minach Ai. You shecht the sheep, now you can eat it. The shchita was a kosher shchita, and it allows you to now eat the animal. That's not the case when it comes to korban. You shecht the animal, but as we know from Masechta Zvachim, shechting the animal doesn't allow you to eat it right away. You have to do Kabbalah Sadam, Olach Sadam, Zrika Sadam. Only then can you eat it. So shchita by an animal, by a korban, does not allow you to eat the meat. It's not matter the meat. It's a pre what comes after the word after pre? precondition. It's almost like a precondition. It's like a first step for being able to eat meat. So the chokam de lo zarik dam, as long as you haven't done zrikas dam, lo mishtri basar. The basar is not permitted. So the shchita technically on its own is shchita she'ena ru'uya by a korban. How interesting is that? And therefore, if the shchita of the mother is technically speaking a shchita she'ena ru'uya, well, if it's a shchita she'ena ru'uya, lo shmei shchita. And if it's lo shmei shchita, then it has no implication vis-a-vis the daughter. And therefore, the daughter should be completely kosher. And when you shech the daughter in the azara, it should be completely fine. Why would there be a chi of makis for oso vezbino? Shenya my soifeg esarboyim ufasul. Why do we say then that the second that when you shech the daughter, you chayv makis for oso vezbino and the shchita is psula? Because mechus man, you're not allowed to offer. You have to wait till tomorrow for the daughter. Why? As far as Reb Shimon is concerned, there's no shchita here. There's no oso vezbino. El shmamino deloi Reb Shimon. So rather, it must be that our Mishnah is in fact incompatible with the Shita of Reb Shimon. Shita Dachi. So says the Gemara, okay. Like why is that so interesting? There might be other opinions that our Mishnah is incompatible with. Like, okay, fine, so Reb Shimon has his own Shita. Like, why do we have to point out that our Mishnah isn't Reb Shimon? Okay, fine. Shchitas Kodshim. Like, what's the big chiddush here? So shchitas kodshim, it's tzricha. I'll tell you what the big chiddush here, because this whole sugya, this whole concept is a pretty big chiddush. To say that shchitas kodshim is inherently shchita she'ena ru'uya, every time you shech the korban, it's shchita she'ena ru'uya, that's a big chiddush. So I may have thought to say shchitas kodshim shchita ru'uya. I may have thought that the shchita of a korban is shchita ru'uya. Sure, there's other steps that need to be done subsequently, but the shchita itself, it's a kosher shchita. If instead of shechting the animal by a korban, you would have torn open its throat and then done zrikas adam, that would be not kosher, even though you did zrikas adam. But the shchita and how it's done matters. It must be a kosher shchita in order for the zrikas adam to be matir the meat. So v'chi shachat mishtri basar v'shchita ru'uyi. So since when you shecht a korban and then subsequently do zrikas adam, you can eat the meat. But if you tear open its neck and then subsequently do zrikas adam, you can't eat the meat. So I may think that therefore a kosher shchita by a korban would be considered shchita ru'uya, even though you still have to do zrikas adam. But the point is, there must be a kosher shchita in order for the zrikas adam to allow you to eat it, and therefore we'll consider a properly done shchita to be a shchita ru'uya, even though there are still subsequent steps. And therefore, maybe Reb Shimon would consider the shchita of a korban to be shchita ru'uya, and there would be oso vezbino over there. Kamash malan, no. Shchita of a korban is inherently considered shchita she'ena ru'uya because it on its own is unable to be matir the meat, and therefore it's a shchita she'ena ru'uya, and Reb Shimon would say it's not a shchita, and therefore the second, when you shech the daughter, there would be no chiyav makis, and it would be a kosher shchita there. Our Mishnah therefore is certainly incompatible with the shita of Reb Shimon. Chevra, we are going to end it over here for Daf Pei of Masechta Chullin. Chevra, Daf Pei of Masechta Chullin. We had done a whole chunk of it yesterday, which it was a big daf. But today we started kind of with a running head start, and we jumped right into defining a koi. We saw that while yesterday we defined a koi as being a mix between a behema and a chaya, we saw that there are in fact more definitions. For example, it could be a wild ram. It could of course be a behema chaya combo like we saw yesterday. Its own thing that we are unsure if it is a behema or a chaya, or maybe it's simply a behema, and that this devei that shabez doshai, they had whole herds of them. And then we talked about the izei debala, whether it's considered a behema or a chaya. That seemed to be inconclusive. And then we began discussing Reb Shimon's perspective on oso ve'espino, and we showed how it is incompatible with our Mishnah, based on the fact that Reb Shimon holds that shchita she'ena ru'uya lo shma shchita, and this is a discussion that is going to continue on to tomorrow's daf. Chevre, enjoy the day. Have a great day. Cheers.